Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. As Dan mentioned, we got two upcoming webinars the rest of this month. Those will be presented by yours truly. Was just working on the decks yesterday to get those wrapped up ahead of time, so I don't have to worry about them next week and the week after. But today we're going to talk about workplace investigations. I was just telling Dan before we went live that this is one of my favorite presentations. In fact, it's probably one of the first, if not the absolute first thing I presented on with my HR counsel, however long ago we started. I don't even remember when it was, 7, 8, 9 years ago. And I know I really like this presentation. I'm sad that I had to chop it up so that we can meet time. And in fact, if you look at your slides, you're going to be like, there's no way he's going to get through all these slides. And the answer is you're right. I'm not going to get through all these slides. I'm aiming to get through maybe slide 11, but we have the extra slides there just in case things go swimmingly and I make good progress. So today we're talking about how to conduct workplace investigations. As some background on myself, I used to be a prosecutor in a former life. And so I was very intimately familiar with investigations and the investigative process. And it's not too different, from the criminal world, with police detectives and sheriff's detectives and whatnot. And the HR world, when you're doing an investigation into alleged misconduct, obviously the stakes are a little different. Nobody died, hopefully, in your workplace investigation. If so, I suppose you're going to have OSHA knocking on your door. But the basics are the same across the spectrum. Um, there's no giant difference. So there's no secret sauce. The basics are the same, and I think they're actually really fun. So it is important, as I note here, to do a workplace investigation correctly. Because all the actions that you as a company are going to take based upon an employee's complaint or a third party's complaint are going to be based off the facts that you learn during the investigation. It can impact employee discipline, it can impact lawsuits, it can impact lots of other things. That said, it's not wise to rush headlong into an investigation without doing some planning and some documentation and some level setting and some stage setting, because there are a lot of traps for the unwary here. Not just in terms of legal things that you could potentially mess up, but there are also traps in terms of how you would conduct the investigation itself. And as I said, my initial foray into the law was as a prosecutor, a special prosecutor. So I think that putting on your detective hat, think of your favorite detective, Columbo, whatever, Sherlock Holmes, and put on that detective hat and act like you're the detective trying to figure out what happened in a case. So a little bit of bedrock foundation setting here is that a good investigation is going to start with a good policy. So how are you handling complaints internally? Um, is there a special process that somebody has to go through to start a complaint? If someone like a manager or supervisor who normally doesn't handle complaints hears of something or catches wind of something or observes something, does that manager or supervisor or maybe just another random employee know what to do with that information? Do they know where complaints go? So if they do see something and they never bring it up and it comes up in a future investigation that this employee or manager or supervisor saw something but didn't say anything, that could lead to issues for you down the road from a legal standpoint. So make sure you have policies about what happens if someone, an employee of whatever level, sees an issue that they think needs to be looked into. Make sure that maybe something like an open door policy is something that you might want to think about in terms of disclosing issues to upper management or to HR. The next part is you should figure out who's going to do investigations. Is there a single department that is going to handle investigations? Is it going to be different departments? For example, maybe you have a safety department that handles OSHA issues like slip and falls and ladder safety and all that sort of fun stuff. Maybe they would handle those sort of OSHA safety complaints, and HR would handle something more along the terms of harassment complaints, sexual harassment, discrimination type things. So make sure that you set the ground rules in terms of who's going to handle what. And in so doing so, like you want to get someone who's familiar with doing an investigation. So you wouldn't want me to come out and do investigation about OSHA trenching rules. I don't know anything about OSHA trenching rules. I know they exist. It's probably going to be better to get someone like a safety manager or an outside expert who has some sort of expertise or even just familiarity with the topic area to handle that. And also you should have investigations, you should have rules and policies and procedures about keeping the information that comes up under wraps. Make sure that nobody's blabbing about anything and all that sort of fun stuff so that you can keep your investigation on the straight and narrow. As I just mentioned, you want to start with the right investigator. You want someone who understands how to perform an investigation, someone who understands what the company policies are, someone that is able to understand the position of both parties, that the victim and the alleged perpetrator are going to be in difficult positions here. You want someone who's going to be impartial, and so a lot of times the supervisor, companies will appoint the supervisor to be the investigator. And in my opinion, that's the wrong choice almost always. The supervisor, if they know the parties or at least one of the parties, is going to have a hard time being impartial or being seen as impartial. The investigator might be their best, but if they know one of the parties more than the other, it's just an appearance of impropriety. And you want someone who's not rushing through it, somebody that has the time to give the investigation their full attention. Timing. You want to do your investigation as soon as you can. Sexual harassment, cases, if you look at the cases, they emphasize timely action. So if you wait 2-3 weeks to start an investigation after a complaint, number one, you're already behind the 8 ball because there might be some spoliation of evidence. Evidence might have been destroyed, collection of what happened, but also it's going to look like you're dragging your feet if the EEOC comes in and says, well, what the heck happened here with this investigation? They're not going to be impressed if you wait. So starting as soon as you can allows you to follow up on any other leads that pop up, and it can lead to other available defenses if there actually is a lawsuit that comes out of an investigation. That said, don't sacrifice speed for quality. The goal is to do it right, and there are no points awarded for finishing the investigation first. It's not like a race, but you want to avoid unnecessary delays, but you also want to take the time to do it right. It's a fine line, but I think it's pretty straightforward. And you want to make sure as much as you can that you keep the alleged victim from the alleged perpetrator to avoid any future claims of follow-up harassment or maybe retaliation. So generally just keep them from being required to work together if you can. The process of an investigation is really important. Like I said, you need to be impartial. So you can't prejudge what happened going into it. You have to go into it with an open mind. And in so doing, you still have to prepare. You have to figure out what happened, figure out the background information. Are there any emails or documents that are pertinent to this investigation? Are there any videos? Were there any social media posts about this that might be useful to the investigation? And even after your first investigation, somebody might, present a really compelling case that something really did happen. But don't prejudge the investigation before the interviews are complete. You have to figure out how much of investigation you're going to do. How broad is your scope? Thankfully, with things like sexual harassment or discrimination, they're pretty finite points of conduct that you're investigating, and so you don't have to go too far. But if it's something that's more pervasive, allegedly, then you have to determine how far you're going to get into the weeds with this. Determining methods. Are you going to tape interviews, audio tape, videotape? Are you going to have a stenographer? Probably not. Who are you going to interview? You want to be thorough with what you do. You want to make sure that you have all the I's dotted and the T's crossed. To speak in the parlance of detective speak again, you want to follow up on any leads just to make sure you're not missing anything. And you want to paper the file, document everything. Consider writing out a list of questions with space for notes between writing answers. Consider where the interviews are going to be and what order they come in. And we're going to talk about the order in just a little bit. And then keep in mind throughout the whole process what your objective is. Your objective is to suss out the facts. You want to figure out what happened. If you don't want to figure out what happened, don't do the investigation. It's going to be waste everyone's time. As you're going through the process, you're also determining if the party you're talking to is telling you the truth, if they're telling you a half truth, or if they're lying, or maybe it's a combination of the three. And throughout the process, you want people to buy into the process. You want them to trust the process. You want employees or other parties to believe that the investigation is fair. You want them to believe that the investigation is not rigged, that you haven't prejudged what happened. And you want them to believe that you want to discover the truth. And fortunately, if you follow the steps before this, that's going to be easily done. All right. So this little circle thing is the investigation circle, I guess I call it. We're going to go through this. We're just going to talk about what order we interview people in. And the first one's going to be the complainant in that green box there. We want to know the behavior at issue from the horse's mouth. Now, you have to remember to stay neutral, even if your victim here is really sympathetic. So don't be surprised also if the person who's filing the complaint gets really emotional. It happens a lot in sexual harassment cases or other hot button issues. But doesn't mean that you have to take a break just because someone is emotional or starts crying. If they can continue with the process or the investigation, you continue until you feel like you're not making progress anymore. When you're talking with the complainant, don't make any commitments as to what's going to happen. That I'm going to fire that SOB if I prove this case is true. Just stick to the facts. Find out what the facts are. Let them know that you're just trying to figure out what happened. And once you have an understanding of what happened, then you will make a determination as to what is going to occur to the alleged perpetrator. Second step is you're going to talk to other witnesses. So after you talk to the complainant, you're going to say, all right, I've identified some people in my pre-investigation preparation to figure out, if they're witnesses, if they saw something. We see video if other people were in the area where something might have happened. And then there's also might be people that the complainant brings up. They say this person was there and they heard Bob say blah, blah, blah. And so you want to take a look and talk to all these people that you identified, either in your preparation or that the complainant identified in that interview. And you want to see, when you talk to them, what they have to say about the story from their angle, because things are always different. One person might see something one way, another person might see something another way, or say that was not what I heard. I heard X, Y, and Z, not A, B, and C. So it's always important to talk to other witnesses because they have an important point of view, and um, a lot of time memory is not perfect. People remember things differently. After you talk to the complainant and any other witnesses and reviewing all the evidence that you are then ready to talk to the alleged wrongdoer. This person, more than likely, is going to be defensive. Um, be ready for that. They're being accused of doing something, and either they did it and they're embarrassed, or they did it and they are trying to get away with it, or they did it and they don't want to get in trouble because they don't think it was really that bad, or they really didn't do it. You can't put a finger on exactly why somebody would be defensive. You can come up with lots of reasons why, but you can't pinpoint it at the time. So what I like to do when I'm talking to the wrongdoer, alleged wrongdoer, sorry, I didn't prejudge the investigation yet, is I like to use a longer opening introduction to them to like make them feel more at ease. Ask them some simple questions. Talk about, if you know their service history, have they won any awards at the company? Talk about any prior jobs. Talk about what they like about their jobs. What do you like about being, a forklift driver or whatever? And that kind of puts them at ease and calms down. It takes a little temperature out of the room rather than jumping in, Tom Cruise, Jack Nicholson saying, I want the truth, you can't handle the truth sort of thing. It is kind of an adversarial process, but as the interviewer, as the investigator, you want to make it as neutral as you can. And so getting them more at ease is going to bring down those defense barriers that people are bringing up. And finally, our last slide here, before our time runs out, is we're going to talk about follow-up. So if more witnesses are discovered after you talk to the alleged wrongdoer, think about, does this person add any value to my investigation? Can they corroborate somebody's story? Or could they discredit somebody else's version of a story? If so, yes, those people are probably important to interview and figure out what's happening. And if neither of those are true, if they can't corroborate or discredit a story, then I wouldn't waste your time. And I would just document why you don't need to talk to them in the steps of the investigation. Fast forwarding a bit, once you're through all these cycles, if you have to go through it again and follow up with points you found from other witnesses, either to the complainant, other witnesses, or the wrongdoer, you do that and you keep going in a circle until you're done. And at that point, you're ready to make a determination as to what actually happened, and from there, you get to move on to discipline if there was a finding of wrongdoing. Now, that whole second half is another whole presentation, and we can get into that at another time. But for today, we are out of time. So thank you all for joining us today. Next week, we're employee retention, I think we're talking about. And then on the 22nd, Flashback Friday, or whatever it is, and I'm going to talk about sharing background reports and sharing I-9 documents at that webinar. So thanks again for joining us. Hope to see you all next week and the week after. Thanks.